So the Marshall game, are we a little concerned? I guess defense would be the first thing that comes up. Of course, the play was not stellar, at least early in the game. They march down the field. Marshall does. Stone Earl, he looked pretty impressive while he was in the game, running around, throwing, running the wrong way, throwing passes, running the opposite direction. He was accurate, and Marshall kept things somewhat interesting.
Yeah, for the game, Marshall had 4 possessions of 8 plays or longer, so they were able to sustain possessions. In the first half, they were combined 7 of 13 on 3rd and 4th down, so they were able to sustain possessions. And what I didn't get, and I don't know what each player's relative strengths and weaknesses are. I don't watch them every day in practice like the coaches do. But I think after the first or second time they had converted 3rd and short against the 4-2-5 defense, I was done with that. I was like, so correct me if I'm wrong, Sandy, but they went back in the Western Michigan game on the second series of the game and put Arvell Reese out there in the 4-3 and pulled Jordan Hancock off the field on the second series of the Western Michigan game. I don't know if it was just to get Reese on the field or show it for future opponents that, hey, they will run a 4-3. But if there was ever a time to run the 4-3, I think it would have been on 3rd and short in this last game with Arvell Reese on the field, because they didn't have anybody who could read and react to whatever it was Marshall was doing, which was quarterback run and some other things. Marshall converted those 3rd and shorts, and it wasn't even a question. They needed 3rd and 4 and got like 8. It wasn't even a simple, go measure it type thing. No, they just lined up, ran a simple, quarterback counter or something, and first down. I'm like, where the hell is Arvell Reese? Mad scientist Jim Knowles, Admiral Kilbride from NCIS LA. What are we doing here? And he got like 10 questions on Arvell Reese yesterday, every possible angle. Why isn't Arvell Reese doing this? Why isn't Arvell Reese doing that? And I got to wonder, because it doesn't add up to me. I don't know this is what Marshall did to him. Most of the teams that are going to play in the Big Ten are going to have better offense than Marshall. So go with that, whatever you want.
Yeah, they were 3 for 3 on 3rd down on that first drive that went for a touchdown. It was 3rd and 3 and 3rd and 4, and they did throw on both of those, but the 3rd and 1 was the goal line, the touchdown run. And obviously they ran there. I knew going in, and I wrote about it, that people are going to be frustrated after they watch this because of the running quarterback. And it was the first time they got to see a quarterback that is going to be part of the run. They're going to see it again this week with Aiden Childs, so they have to handle it better. But what they did do is they knocked the quarterback out of the game for running the ball too much. So that is the danger of putting a quarterback out there that's going to run. And will Michigan State want to do that as much with Aiden Childs? He's going to scramble and make plays, but he also gets hit. And he's going to take some sacks. So you're going to be careful with how much you put him out there in danger. But there was no concern about Stone Earl. They were just like, yeah, go ahead and keep running the ball. And if you get hurt, well, the NIL checks will still keep coming, perhaps. So they put a beating on him, but he was successful. And I think some of the scheming that you saw where it was basically at times Marshall would go 4 wide, and then it would just be one linebacker in the middle to contend with the quarterback and the running back. And that's not a winning proposition, because either you're being read or you're being blocked. And so they've got to kind of fix that portion of it. And Knowles was frustrated with his play, with the linebackers tackling. I thought it was interesting when he was asked about the linebackers as a whole. He said, they know what they're doing. They're reading it. They're doing this. They're doing that. Got to get better at tackling. And I think we continue to see that. And they don't tackle in practice. Most teams don't tackle in practice. Not like you'd like to tackle, not like you tackle in a game. And so right now they're still trying to improve that portion of what they do. And overall they're pretty good, but they've missed some quarterbacks the last couple of games. including this past one, and they're probably going to miss Aiden Childs a little bit in this one, just because that's the kind of athlete that he is. But Knowles was very direct that the best two linebackers are Sonny Styles and Cody Simon, and then Arvell Reese and CJ Hicks are behind them. I think it's more of a top three than a top four, and they'll continue to get Arvell Reese out there. I think it's interesting that this past week it was Sonny Styles with the green dot, and I think that's probably because they're going to be going back and forth with Arvell Reese and Cody Simon so much, so that the helmet stays the same, the communication stays the same with the same guy, because he's going to be in there more. But it'll be interesting to see how they do that moving forward. He did say he just wants to move the green dot around to the linebackers, but to me, it's a situation where there's going to be more and more like substitution with Arvell Reese in there, and he's only a middle linebacker right now. So they're just going to continue maybe to keep the dot with Sonny. We'll see, but he's going to play more and more. And there are times where it doesn't even seem like a question that he's the best linebacker on the defense, but we don't see we don't see everything else that goes on. We don't see the missed plays, you may make a play, but do the wrong thing doing it. And you have to have the right answers afterwards when you talk to coaches. Like I remember a few years back, more than a few years back, I guess now, watching like Al Washington talk about Taraji Mitchell in a coach's clinic. And he said something to the effect of, he never goes the right way, but he gets to the ball. And you kind of see like how that played out throughout his career, where he played and then he didn't. He started and then he didn't. And then he transferred, and I don't know that he ever did much there. So you still got to be doing the right things, even if you're making some plays. Do the right thing so that you're not leaving something for an offense to take advantage of. But I haven't seen that from him. It doesn't seem like anything bad happens when he's out there. I don't see him. There are other guys you're like, the guy missed a tackle. You don't often see that with Arvell Reese.
Our buddy Keep Choppin' is making a statement here about Will Howard's first 3 games, apparently 8th in the Big Ten in completion percentage. I got to say, I will like the moment in which I see a Will Howard pass and think, wow, he really, I know he's throwing some nice balls downfield, but just really had to make a big throw in a big moment. Not necessarily, I'm talking a game-winning situation, just, a drive in the first quarter against a good team where he makes a throw here and there. He distributes the football. That's what he's asked to do, and that's what he's done thus far. And the Ibuka play, the Jeremiah Smith down the seam, those are obvious type throws that he's making that need to be made. But how would you guys stack up on Will Howard at this point? Is there really anything to go by that hasn't already been seen?
Well, he was 16 of 20 in the last game with an interception, so I don't worry so much about, and that's the best team that they've played, so I don't worry too much about percentage. 17 of 28, 18 of 26. I mean, we're kind of splitting hairs here. His completion percentage is 68.9, 69%. That's pretty good. So
8th in the Big Ten.
Must be a lot of good passers in the Big Ten this year. I don't know, or they haven't played anybody.
Bingo.
Yeah, he's probably 3 completions away from being like 3rd.
Well, right now there are seven quarterbacks that are completing over 70% of their passes in the Big Ten. That's going to come down. If Will Howard is more likely to be around his percentage for the season than pretty much anybody but like Dylan Gabriel, although Dylan Gabriel's completing 84% of his passes right now. That's not going to stay there. So I think everybody's going to come back down over the course of a season. If Will Howard is completing 69% of his passes, he will finish, based on the last 8 years, 1st, 2nd, or 3rd in the Big Ten in completion percentage. So I wouldn't worry about that at all. But you still want to see better accuracy downfield. And That's the one question we've talked about with him when he transferred in, and after we discussed who he was, and we don't know how well he can throw the ball downfield because you don't really get to see it as much at Kansas State. And now you don't need to see it as much right now because they're not doing it, but he's doing pretty much everything else in a good rate. But now as defenses start to come up to try to stop Ohio State from averaging 12 yards per carry like they did the last game, now you're going to be able to start throwing over the top, and he's got to be able to hit those. They said that he's gotten more accurate since he arrived than he was when he got here, and he's continued to get better. And he's got a strong arm, but we'll see how it goes, because those are difficult throws, especially if you're just, some of these you're not even trying to pinpoint, you're just throwing it up to let somebody go get them, so it shouldn't be as difficult that way. And when you've got Ohio State's receivers, they should win more than they lose. But I do think we'll start to see more downfield passing, but I still think it's a question as to how accurate and how sure they can be. Because going back to the Boston College game, Michigan State had receivers running wide open downfield, and Childs was not able to hit them. If you missed those, that's a touchdown that you've lost. And in the Big Ten, you can't afford to lose many of those.
Is anyone concerned about what is basically a sneaky, difficult stretch of games when you string these all together through the first week of November? Now that Michigan State has proven to have a pulse, much more so than we expected, Iowa, Oregon, bye week, Nebraska, Penn State, that's a pretty challenging run to not have a letdown. Not that this team can't have a slight letdown and still get through any one of those opponents, aside from Oregon possibly. I still think, and I may be proven wrong, that there is a decided gap between this team and the rest of the Big Ten. I think they're better than everybody else in the Big Ten. Not that they can just roll out their helmets, but I think that they're a better team than Oregon. I truly believe that.
I wonder how much of maybe the lackluster play against Marshall for the defense is just you're ready to move on to the Big Ten schedule, and we'll see if that's the case Saturday night when they ramp things up. And sometimes I equate it to the stuff from Jurassic Park about how Tyrannosaurus Rex doesn't want to be fed; he wants to hunt. Sometimes a team doesn't want to be fed; they want to hunt, and this is an opportunity to go do that for them. And we'll see how that goes. And based on the mood from Day, this was as grumpy and as just not in a good mood as we've seen him in a while. And Knowles he's up and down depending on, I don't know, whether his coffee is cold or not, as to what kind of mood he's in. But I thought Day was pretty gruff. And so that generally bodes well for, I think, a team that Saturday, but I do not have the actual spreadsheet data on that one.
That's a first.
Yeah, I'm of a mind, I think that they're on edge because they realize that, that they got to step it up. I mean, you can't, they're come off of an open week last week. And so it's the second bad start to a game in 3 weeks and 3 games, and you can't go on the road and fall behind 10-0 and just assume you're going to storm back and win the game 49-10. It's just not going to happen that way in the Big Ten. So you got to come out of the gate a little bit stronger. And Michigan State, I've said this, Ohio State's rubbed their noses in it pretty good here the last decade, and I think that they're in for a little bit of a fight. Jonathan Smith is a real football coach, and he's going to put a winner on the field there at East Lansing. I think. I'm not going to say they're going to win the Big Ten. They lose to Boston College without probably one of their best players in Nick Marsh, the wide receiver. He didn't play, and not sure what his status will be this week against Ohio State, but he had some big numbers in the first 3 games for them. They went on the road, beat Maryland pretty handily, even though it was like a 3-point win. They led, I want to say, most of, if not the whole game. So to me, Ohio State's in for a challenge this week. Getting back to your idea about this being a tough stretch, then we know Iowa's going to be competitive. Their offense has improved. Caleb Johnson, 200-yard game this past week for Iowa in a Big Ten game at Minnesota. And then obviously at Oregon, they're off this week and getting ready to put the finishing touches on what they need to do to get ready to play Ohio State. So, yeah, it's going to be a tough one. I think it's going to be a tough stretch, I think, here for Ohio State to get to that next bye.
What do we think is more likely? Ohio State leaves Happy Valley undefeated or with 1 loss?
It's more likely that they leave Happy Valley with a loss. Having had a loss, I don't know. Would the order of likelihood be 1 loss, 0 loss, 2 losses, basically? Because I think you're asking a lot to win at both places. In Oregon, I think they're still favored, and nobody's going to be surprised if Ohio State wins. But especially after the way Oregon started, I have no idea who I'm going to pick in that one. But I'm always siding with the home field advantage in these games. But the line of scrimmage is also important too.
Yeah, it's still football. So that still is necessary.